What is up, party people? Welcome back to my channel. I'm Jamila. This is JemilaBeReadin because I do be reading, and I am filming this intro after I've already filmed this video. I initially filmed this video as all the series that I'm in the middle of, and it ended up being over 45 minutes long. So I thought that I would actually split this into two videos. So this first video that you're seeing right now are series that I'm not going to be continuing on with, and the second video is going to be all of the series that I'm currently in the middle of, whether I'm caught up or not, and also at the end some series that I'm not sure if I want to continue and I'm asking for your opinion. So for this, it's going to just be series that I'm not continuing on with, and then I will hopefully upload the second part relatively soon. So here is the rest of the video. So there's actually quite a few series that I started and don't really have any intention of finishing. So the first is a throwback. You might remember I did a standalone review video for this first book. I don't think a lot of people saw it, but it was one of my favorite videos that I filmed. I spent a lot of time like pulling all of the pop culture references and stuff. It was a very long video. If you want to go check it out, I'll have it linked. But this is the Golden Arrow series. The first book is The Frame Up. It's like this kind of mystery series with this main girl who is not like other girls. She's a total geek, total nerd, loves all of these things, and she kind of teams up with this, I think it was an FBI agent, police officer, whatever. And I guess there's another book, potentially two more in this series. I hated this. It was such a slog to get through, and I obviously have not continued on with it. I think I read it back in like 2021 or something like that. The cover is really fun. It was very striking. That's what initially drew me to it, but the insides, not so great. Then is Red Queen, you know, a popular one. A really popular young adult dystopian kind of fantasy mishmash. I didn't like this. I think I read this back in 2020. It was one of the first few books I started reading when I was getting back into it. And yeah, I really didn't like it. Here's the thing, I might actually go back and reread that first book. I'm not going to continue on in the series. And the same goes for another book on this list, which is The Selection. I attempted to film this reading the popular dystopian books of ye olden time of 2012 and make some sort of commentary about like the dystopian genre. You know, but I just didn't. The HarperCollins union strike happened, and a lot of the books on that were a part of the strike, and I just didn't want to, you know, force myself to read these books if I wasn't going to, you know, at least get content out of it. So I might return to that idea. I don't know. I'm kind of iffy about it. But yeah, so Red Queen and The Selection, which I read earlier this year, both not good. Not good at all. Not going to be continuing on in the series. We have From Blood and Ash, which was kind of not the beginning of the romantasy craze. I think that's probably like ACOTAR or whatever, but this was certainly there like in 2020. I read the first two books in that series too. The first one is bad. The second one was even worse. And No more of that. Crave is another YA fantasy, paranormal fantasy book. And this one has like a bajillion books in the series. I don't really know how Tracy Wolff has been pumping all of these out. But Crave, the reason why I picked it up is because of the cover. It's really giving knockoff Twilight. And I was very curious. I was like, maybe I will at least have just like some silly, goofy time. It's bad, but I'll have a good time with it. And I was feeling that way for like, I would say the first 40% of that book. And then there was just so much more left. And the fact that it took this girl so long to figure out what was going on and that she was in like a magical boarding school with other creatures, like I had enough. I was listening to the audiobook for this one, and I remember like getting to the 60% mark and reading it on 3 times speed. I don't usually go past 2 times, but I was listening to it on 3 times speed because I was like, I already committed this much time. Like, I have to finish this now. And I do have regrets because it was not good. And I cannot get over the fact that the main dude's name is Jackson with an X. Anyways, yeah, not continuing on with that. And then we have my absolute bane of my existence, which is Kings of the Wild, which this book continues to haunt me everywhere I go. I go to a bookstore and I see it as a staff pick. I log on to Instagram or TikTok and someone's like, this is the best book ever. And I am, you know, trying to take a deep breath and reflect that people are allowed to have their own opinions. And this doesn't say anything about them as a person. But this book is one of the worst books that I read. I have such a burning, deep hatred for this book. And it really just clouds all of my judgment every time I see it pop up. And then I made a TikTok video about it like 2 years ago, and I'm still getting comments from people who are like, you're stupid. And I'm like, ooh, say that to my face. Well, come and say it to my face. Let's see what happens. But there is that. It is a series. I will not be continuing. And that's all I'll say about that. We have a book that I quite frankly forgot about, and that is the For the Wolf series. I think it's called The Wilderwood. I read this like 2 years ago with some of my friends, and it was just okay. I gave it like a 3 stars. It wasn't terrible, but I also didn't really feel compelled to read the next book. I think it's a duology. There was kind of like a twist ending, a little bit of a cliffhanger, but I don't know, I felt so bleh about that first book. And this is one that you could maybe convince me to read, especially because it's just like one other book left in this series. But I think I would probably have to reread For the Wolf, and I don't really want to. Yeah, you know, I don't have really strong feelings about that one. Beasts of Prey is one that really I feel so disappointed about. This is by Ayana Gray. It's a young adult series. It's a trilogy. Duology? I can't really remember, but I was so excited for this one because it was getting so much hype. So many of my mutuals on TikTok were talking about this one and loving it. I think Steph Curry, if I recall correctly, like chose this as like his first YA book club pick and all that stuff. So I was so excited to pick this one up, and I didn't like it all that much. I think I gave it a 2-star if I'm remembering correctly. This was a few years back as well, and it just was such a massive disappointment. I didn't like it, and I will not be continuing with that series. We have the Avery Keene series. Now, I didn't even know that this was a series until I was like doing stock of my Goodreads for the last few years, trying to see what stuff I had picked up, and I just discovered that there's a second book in this series, and that's the first book is While Justice Sleeps by Stacey Abrams. And this is another one where I was like, it's fine. It wasn't terrible. I didn't love it. I felt kind of middling about it. This is maybe another one I could be convinced to pick up the second book, but I don't know. This isn't like my brand of mystery thriller. I'm not super big on the genre to begin with, but I find that I'm very particular about what I like, and this, I didn't love it all that much. Speaking of mystery thrillers that I don't like, Finley Donovan, I really hated that first book. I didn't like it at all. I know it's like a well-loved, like kind of fun mystery thriller, a little bit silly goofy, you know, and I love a silly goofy time, but this definitely was not my brand of humor. I found Finley, the main character, to be so insufferable and so immature, and I really didn't like this one. I really didn't, and I will not be continuing on. I cannot deal with Finley. Godspeed to her and her life, but she needs to stay away from me. We have another kind of disappointing one, and again, this is one that I could potentially be convinced to finish, because it is a duology, and that's the Blood Gift duology, the first book being The Blood Trials by Davenport. I read this first book, I want to say last year. I was very excited about it. Again, this is one that I've been seeing a lot of hype for. A lot of people who I share similar tastes to really enjoyed this one, and I gave it a 3-star. I don't look back at it fondly. There were parts that I liked, and there were parts that I really didn't. I thought the pacing was off. I was kind of confused by the reading experience. And I know this was intended to be a trilogy, I believe, or at least a longer series, but the publisher kind of forced N.E. Davenport to do this into a duology. So I heard that the second book is not really good, even from people who really enjoyed the first one. So that's why I'm feeling like I already didn't really love the first book, and I don't want to go into something that is going to be even more badly paced and doesn't really have a good wrap up or conclusion, or that have plot holes or things that aren't tidied up. So I don't know. I'm feeling kind of iffy about this one. Probably not going to pick up that last book. This one is the Darkverse series. Now, I don't typically count romance series like as a part of this, because the majority of them can be read as like standalones. So I don't really count that as a series. But this one has, this is like a 2-parter, and then there are other books in this series that follows other characters that were introduced. And I think you do need to read them in order. So I'm counting this one just because there is that kind of, like, you do need to read them in order. And I read the first book, The Predator, and I attempted to read the follow-up book. I don't recall the name of it. And I was like feeling kind of meh about The Predator, and I read about like half of that second book and I hated it, and it made me like just hate The Predator also. This is like a mafia dark romance book. It's not super my scene, but I keep trying because I feel like I want to, I don't know, not necessarily get into the dark romance subgenre, but I feel like there could be something out there for me. And I don't shy away from darker themes, but I have really a very mixed to negative experience with the subgenre so far. I'm kind of thinking about doing kind of like a taste test or trying to find the dark romances for me in the new year. So if you have any suggestions, please let me know. But yeah, this one just didn't work for me. This girl is supposed to be like super genius hacker. There was not enough super genius hackering, shenanigans in this for me. I didn't love the relationship between the two main characters. There's just such a deep well of misogyny in a lot of these mafia books that I find so deeply unappealing. And this was pretty much the same as every other mafia book that I read. So yeah. All right, in the same vein as a romance series, we have All the King's Men by Kennedy Ryan. This is another one that has 2 books in it, and they're about the same couple, and there's like a cliffhanger even at the end of the first book. I read The Kingmaker earlier this year, and I have to say this one was really disappointing for me. I really love Kennedy Ryan. Before I Let Go and Real were some of my faves. They're one of my favorite romances. So I was excited to check this one out. I really didn't like this one. I did not, and I don't care to read the conclusion to their story. I was not rooting for these 2 characters to get together. I thought the main dude sucked, and there was just like, they met when she was like underage, and it keeps getting brought up, like nothing happened at the time. And I was like, maybe I can excuse this because nothing's happening. They're like older when things start to happen, but it kept getting brought up, and I was like, I can't do it. I really can't. So, and the final series that I'm not going to be continuing with is Red Rising. Yeah, I will link the video in which I read this book. I hate this book. I hate the majority of its fans. I do. And I also hate the author. So that's all I need to say about that. And also, free Palestine.